All right, folks, the SEC, you know they have no shame, and now they are demanding $2 billion in disgorgement and civil penalties with interest from Ripple. So let's break it down, folks. Last night, this dropped at about 9:30 on the West Coast. And so I stayed up past about 10 o'clock last night going through, and I read the entire document, at least the main 30, 40 pages, and then scrolling through the evidence and the memes. No joke, they literally were using memes and tweets as their evidence for why Brad Garlinghouse and Ripple had no remorse, acknowledged no wrongdoing, tried to say that it was a complete victory for Ripple. And you could just, hear the saltiness in their voice as they wrote out this whole order. I mean, most of the order literally is just jealousy and them hating on the fact that Ripple's business is so successful. And so I wanted to go through here. If you go to my Twitter, you can see that last night, while I was reading through this whole thing, I was just copy and pasting the main pieces of this that were very important. And so I'm going to read out some of these tweets and kind of break down and share my thoughts. Quick summary, Ripple's business is thriving. It is so clear from this documentation that Ripple's business is thriving. In fact, that's why they're asking for so much money, why they want to hit them with such a strong civil penalty. Is they really want to make an example out of Ripple. That's what this all comes down to. They really want to make an example out of Ripple. And so they're going for $2 billion. Let's break it down, folks. So first off, SEC going for all the money. You guys know it. Orders it to pay $876 million in disgorgement, $198 million in prejudgment interest, and orders it to pay another $876 million civil penalty. So basically, the disgorgement is for the wrongdoing, the ill-gotten gains, and that's $876 million. And then they want to hit them with a civil penalty for the same amount, basically to, stop them from doing it again. And really to send a message to the rest of the space that if you do this, we're gonna hit you hard. Now, this is so interesting because they had blacked out the amounts, right? The amounts that we're talking about in sales was completely redacted. The people that they sold it to, that was redacted as well. Even though I didn't even really see it all that much. I didn't go through all the evidence, but it didn't really look like they actually were using the names of these institutions that Ripple was selling it to. But definitely the amounts were all blacked out, and you could tell that it was significant by the wording and the things that they were saying. It was significantly more than the $700 million that Judge Torres had in the initial claim, the initial complaint, right? Judge Torres ruled that there was $700 million worth of sales to institutional investors. She didn't distinguish between ODL and other institutional sales. It was just all of those institutional sales, $700 million worth. Those had investment contracts. It wasn't XRP that was a security. It was the investment contract, the way that they were structured. Now, without a doubt, you can tell that there definitely is demand for XRP. Listen to this, quote, Ripple was forced to disclose that it has entered into more than 80 institutional sales contracts since the filing of this lawsuit. So after the lawsuit, there's another 80 institutional sales contracts that Ripple was into. And I asked the question, who said there wasn't demand for XRP? There absolutely is. And in fact, they actually picked up their sales after the lawsuit. Quote, Ripple may argue that there is no finding that its post-complaint sales violated the law. All that matters, though, is that Ripple's status and business activities have not changed, such that it is in a position where more violations are possible. No finding of actual post-complaint violations is required. Now, this one really blew me away. So even though post-complaint sales were structured in a way that they are not investment contracts, that doesn't matter, right? Because this whole thing about post-complaint sales, these are sales to institutions after the lawsuit was filed. And we know that this is, billions of dollars worth of sales. The SEC didn't actually include this in their disgorgement. Their disgorgement is all of sales that were done before the lawsuit, basically from 2014 to 2020. And then they did include about, I think, a couple $100 million worth of basically pre-allocation contracts, deals that were already done before the lawsuit, but then those sales were executed after the lawsuit. But they didn't even include in their request for disgorgement and penalties, They didn't even include the post-complaint sales, but they are citing it, saying that basically, even though Ripple probably did structure those post-complaint sales in a way that they weren't investment contracts, the SEC is still requesting, that an injunction is put on them and that no finding of actual post-complaint violations is required. So basically, just because there's the potential for Ripple to structure these as an investment contract means that we need to hit them with an injunction and that we need to disgorge $800 million. Injunctions should be placed on them regardless. The SEC is getting desperate. That's the comment that I added, right? This is absolutely ridiculous, right? Just because you have the potential to structure these as investment contracts, you need to have an injunction placed on you. And that's the big thing that's going to come out of this, folks, is what kind of restrictions does Judge Torres put on Ripple? And, or as I've been suggesting, I believe that Ripple was confident that after the lawsuit, they've been able to structure these deals in a way that it is clearly not an investment contract. You give us dollars, we give you XRP. There's no stipulations. There's no lockup periods. There's no expectations other than you give us cash, we give you XRP. That's a done deal. That's not an investment contract. And so if Ripple's able to get that clarity, then they'll know going forward how they can structure these deals and sales to institutions, and institutions won't have to worry about getting tied up in some sort of issue. Now, this is where the pre-allocation contracts have been confirmed. Quote, for the second component, Ripple received $265 million in proceeds from 4 different institutional buyers after the filing of the complaint. Pursuant to unregistered XRP institutional sales contracts, Ripple entered into before the complaint was filed. Sale occurs under the Securities Act when the parties are bound to deliver the securities, even if performance occurs at a later date. So this confirms pre-allocation contracts, folks, right here. And this is $200 million worth of sales that were already basically set to occur before the lawsuit was filed, and Ripple executed those after the lawsuit, okay? So those were the only sales that the SEC included in kind of their disgorgement request, was about $200 million after the lawsuit, but those were part of deals that were already done. And so to me, this is confirmation of pre-allocation contracts worth $200 million. And this is another 4 institutional clients that wanted to get in on that action. Now, this is the just joke of the whole matter, is that the SEC admits that there's no damages done as far as none of these institutional investors bought XRP and bought it at a loss, or bought it and then, price went down. There was no damages done to these institutional investors. The only thing that they cite is that Ripple didn't disclose the discounts they were giving to some of these institutional clients. So some institutions got better deals than others, and that's what the SEC is concerned about. What a load of you-know-what, right? I believe that Ripple has the right to sell. I mean, it's their property to sell. The only question is, was it an investment contract or not? If they structured the deal where it wasn't an investment contract and they decide to sell it at a discount, what's the problem in that, right? That's their own prerogative. That's their own choice. It's their asset that's not a security. Remember, XRP in and of itself is not a security. It's up to them to decide. If I want to sell my XRP at a discount today to a friend, that is not an investment contract, right? But the SEC is so concerned about protecting investors, and in this case, institutional investors, that they say, quote, if Ripple had followed the law, prospective investors would have had the information they needed to determine whether Ripple was treating them worse or whether they could purchase the XRP at a better price. Are you kidding me? The non-favored XRP institutional sales investors could have demanded and potentially paid lower prices than the prices they paid. But Ripple never filed a registration statement, never provided investors a prospectus, never treated investors uniformly, and appears to have not uniformly disclosed the disparity in prices and discounts offered to XRP institutional sales investors. Well, what if one client's gonna, take for example, R3. Maybe Ripple wanted to give R3 a better deal because they're a consortium of banks, right? Versus another institutional investor that might just be an accredited, investor, whoever it's going to be. They're not going to onboard multiple other banks, right? So maybe Ripple wants to give a better deal to a consortium of banks. This is business, right? This is what you do, right? This is the difference between wholesale and retail. And it's absolutely Ripple's choice, if they so please, and they should have the ability to offer these discounts. Now, remember, this is where the fudsters try to come in and they try to spin. Oh my gosh, Ripple's, selling XRP at a discount. How do you get adoption? This is what everybody does. You give your cryptocurrency to exchanges at a discounted price so that you get listed on the exchanges. Every crypto company does this. This is how you get adoption. This is Ripple's asset and property that they get to do, with however they feel. However they so are pleased to do so, they should be able to sell at a discount, no problem. And who are we protecting? Institutional investors? If they can't leverage and get the best deal, that's on them. It's just ridiculous, And so this is why the SEC wants disgorgement and an additional civil penalty totaling $2 billion. Quote, because disgorgement represents merely a return of ill-gotten gains, an additional monetary penalty is necessary to appropriately punish and deter. So the disgorgement is for ill-gotten gains, and the civil penalty, an additional $800 million, is for punish and to deter. So, this is why they want to make an example out of Ripple so badly here. And they even cite Ripple's significant financial position. Ripple's considerable wealth warrants a significant penalty that is not just a slap on the wrist or cost of doing business. Because Ripple is doing so well, their business is so good, we need to hit them with an even stronger penalty. SEC wants to make an example out of Ripple. Quote, the SEC asked the court to consider how easily actors, particularly in the crypto asset space. Now let's pause right there. I'm surprised that they didn't call it the crypto security space, right? Now the SEC is calling it the crypto asset space. Wait, hold up. I thought this was the crypto security space, right? But now they say, that the SEC asked the court to consider how easily actors, particularly in the crypto asset space, can today engage in the same sort of conduct as Ripple and send a strong message that such abuses will not be tolerated. So in their own words, they want to send a message to the rest of the cryptocurrency space. Why don't you send a message to the folks that actually did ICOs, the folks that are doing pre-sales right now on Solana, doing pre-sales right now on ETH? We even have pre-sales happening on XRP Ledger right now as well, too. But you can see in their own words, they want to make an example. Now, this is where it gets hilarious, folks. This is absolutely legendary. They cite and they put in evidence all these tweets from Brad Garlinghouse, basically saying that, it was a full victory for Ripple. Ripple had no wrongdoing. And literally in the evidence, we have this. This is a picture. I don't know if you'll be able to see this right here. This is Brad Garlinghouse. Excuse me. This is Brad Garlinghouse and Mr. I at XRP Las Vegas right here. And this is a tweet from Mr. I, and he's quoting Digital Asset Investor. Quote, we're going to win this thing because we're the good guys. So Mr. Intuitive quoted DAI, and then he posted this picture of him and Brad Garlinghouse at XRP Las Vegas. And this is actually submitted as evidence in the lawsuit. That basically that, Brad and Ripple, they have no sympathy. They feel no remorse. They're not acknowledging that they took any losses because they didn't, right? I believe that the Ripple, they have a strong case to make, even fighting against some of these institutional sales. We'll see if they end up appealing on this, but I just find it hilarious that we literally have, and I posted this one and I said, I see a future U.S. Senator in the crowd. Here you have it. This is from XRP Las Vegas, and you can see you got Brad Kimes, you got John Deaton, you got Digital Asset Investor, Mr. I, and Brad Garlinghouse there in the center. And I don't know who this other gentleman is. Sorry, I don't recognize you. I'm sure I do know who you are, another member of the XRP community there. But this is being cited as evidence that basically how strong our community is. And you scroll on down this, I'm not going to show you this one. This is the last tweet that I put out last night, and I said, I leave you with this official piece of evidence from the SEC. Good night, XRP community. I love you all. And it's literally a meme, and it says, casually walking through town after years of holding XRP for years. And it's a meme of South Park, And I don't know who this is from South Park, but basically it's got his you-know-what in a wheelbarrow, his big cojones, in a wheelbarrow. And this is actual evidence from the SEC. God forbid the XRP community actually stands up together, supports Brad and Ripple, despite everything that we've had to go through. And we got memes up here of the XRP community having big you-know-what. That is actual official evidence from the SEC. And in fact, I wanted to read off one more thing here. This one from Jeremy Hogan. In response to the $2 billion in the amount, Jeremy Hogan responds and says, let's wait until Ripple's brief. I think they have some strong arguments for pretty much zero. I also saw from Fred Rispoli earlier this morning that basically saying, that he believes that the fine is going to be way, way below this amount. I'll read this out from Fred Rispoli real quick. He says, to clarify, I'm not against Ripple for selling discounted XRP. As one poster noted, this is essentially happens with all of crypto, be it founders' gifts, pre-sales, airdrops, etc. It would be nice, though, if the public knew what those discounts were, because it does affect the market. This is not conjecture. Remember, in previous lawsuits, Ripple explicitly demanded Jed McCaleb and R3 could only sell XRP in defined manner as part of those settlements. There is a reason for that. On the SEC lawsuit, keep in mind that the SEC has lost credibility with the court for some time now. I therefore expect the ultimate restitution fine to be very low, less than $75 million, and I expect the court to rule most of Ripple's business operations to be permitted going forward. However, given that the court did rule institutional sales were unlawful, I do expect there to be some restriction on Ripple. This is the big question, right? Is what restrictions are going to be placed on Ripple? What sort of clarity are they going to get on structuring these contracts in a way that they're not investment contracts? Once that's determined, open up the floodgates and Ripple have full clarity. Every other institution will have full clarity on how to structure these deals. The billion-dollar question is the extent of that restriction. At the same time, if there are severe restrictions, I would expect Ripple to modify those restrictions and just tell the SEC to F off and sue it again if it doesn't like it. This does not put an end to litigation, which sucks, but it will also not cripple Ripple. So he's saying, way below the $75 million. And so to summarize this whole thing up, folks, really interested to see Ripple's brief, what they have to say. I think that they are going to come out with such a strong argument. The SEC, I think, really missed an opportunity to hone in and focus on where they actually, had Ripple. And I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised that they didn't go for more. They didn't include any of the post-complaint sales in their disgorgement penalty. Now, what I'm interested to see is if Judge Torres does rule that the post-complaint sales were investment contracts as well, maybe we'll see that the SEC can file an additional brief, or I don't know, we'll have to see from the lawyers, if they can file an additional amount, because I expected the SEC to say, yeah, we have $700 million here, plus we have another $200 million that they cited that occurred after the lawsuit. But if you look at after the post-complaint sales are billions of dollars worth, and I'm surprised that the SEC didn't try to include that as well. Maybe they're waiting for Judge Torres to actually officially rule, and if she does, maybe then they'll try to add on to that. But I'm actually surprised that the SEC didn't try to go for more. These folks completely have no shame. They've lost all respect in the courts, and you guys have seen that. And I believe that Judge Torres is going to be very reasonable in her ruling when this thing does complete. And they're going to say, yeah, okay, these sales were investment contracts. Ripple, you should have registered these. $20 million fine, $30 million fine, $50 million fine, right? There's no way, I don't believe in any reality where they get a penalty that's over $100 million. I just don't see it happening. But nonetheless, the SEC is demanding $2 billion disgorgement, interest, and civil penalties from Ripple. We will see what Judge Torres rules. Remember, we have 1 month to go. April 22nd is when the reply brief is due from Ripple. It'll take a couple days for the redactions to be put in, and then it will be made public. And then the final reply from the SEC is due on May 6th. There will be some more redactions after that. And then we probably have a couple months to wait until Judge Torres gives us that final ruling. So we're looking at July, August, September is probably when we're going to be getting the final ruling from Judge Torres. where hopefully we'll be able to conclude this thing, put this thing behind us. Ripple will have full clarity going forward on how they can distribute XRP, and we're going to be off to the races, folks. There is so much momentum behind our community. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not here to give anybody financial advice or tell you what to do with your money. I'm just here to say I'm going to be watching XRP very closely over the coming months, because just in the anticipation of what is happening right now, I could definitely see this thing start to move. We're in a very, very interesting spot. I got a lot more content that's going to be dropping here later today. I'll be going live here tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific. That's 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll be going live here on YouTube as well for a full breakdown, more analysis, and I will be doing some Q&A. So please make sure that you guys like this video, share it out far and wide, and make sure you guys come back here later tonight for the live show. We're going to run up a session. All right. I appreciate everyone for stopping by. We'll continue to update you guys, and I will see you in the next one. God bless you all.